Hi, I'm Christopher Ross, and this is the Cinematography Podcast.
The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography Podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Hey there, Ben Rock.
Hey, Ilya Friedman. How's it going, sir?
It's going well. We are back with another episode of the Cinematography Podcast. Who is on our show today?
We have Christopher Ross, the cinematographer of Day of the Jackal, which is currently streaming on Peacock and is quite a fun, engaging, it's just a really cool spy story based on some material that's been around, but it's been highly modernized, and I loved it. For the podcast, I only had to watch episode 1 because that's the one he's nominated for, but I watched the whole series. It's really great.
It's always great that when a show is so good that you have for homework, you have to watch because, it's we're going to talk about it on the show, and then you go, oh my God, this is great, and want to just finish the whole thing.
It's great. His work is amazing in it, and I really enjoyed talking to him about it. I think it's kind of inspirational how he approached the spy genre. How do you make it fresh? How do you make it interesting? How do you draw people in? And also, how do you what tropes and conventions of the spy drama do you just are part of the work, and it's a lovely show. It's really fun. It's dark. It's got a lot of twists. It's good stuff.
Well, we're going to get into that interview and discussion about Day of the Jackal here shortly. But first up is our Close Focus.
And now, Close Focus.
It's when we talk about what's going on in the industry right now. What's the haps, Ben? What's new?
Well, it was an article that you sent me from the LA Times about AI and how it's impacting kind of day-to-day work and stiffs in the Hollywood film industry. And it's a pretty interesting article because it kind of covers the gamut of people who are like, I'm a dolly grip and I'm about to lose my job. Or all the way up to I'm an editor and I got to make my own film using AI and no one was ever going to roll the dice on me, so I got to do my own thing. And I think it's a pretty even-handed appraisal of sort of where we are right now with the state of AI, which we've talked about kind of incessantly. And the article kind of undergirds a lot of my thinking for the most part. How about yourself?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. The article's written by Josh Rottenberg, and I've read some of Josh's other stuff before, and he does a really good job of diving in and exploring a wide variety of perspectives. And he's got, in addition to the people that you mentioned, he's also got, someone who's done visual effects for James Cameron and a lot of other people in there.
James Cameron himself.
Exactly. But what I think is particularly telling about this, and what's really well done about this article, is that it is a vast swath of perspectives and opinions, because really that's what we have right now. AI has failed to actually create the mass displacement that people said was, inevitable, is going to happen. I think it's fair to say that just because AI now is popular and it's been around for a few years and there's some stuff that, like, movies didn't stop getting made overnight and people weren't doing
but like one of the things that's in there though is the grip talking about how, he went to do a green screen kind of shoot and they were like, yeah, we don't need a green screen. And that would have meant, he would have hired, 4 union brothers and sisters to help him hang the green screen on the pipe. Now, I can attest to this because I recently did a project where we weren't going to hire 4 people to do a green screen, but we were shooting on a green screen stage. But when we got there, it was mostly a white cyc and there was not enough of it was painted green and we didn't have the time to fix it. So I tried Runway ML's keying thing, which is AI driven. Yeah. And holy crap, it worked really well for what I needed. I won't say it works for everything, but I was kind of blown away at how quick a job it did of what I needed.
I do believe that green screen changes a lot of things, as does virtual production and the way that you can slide things and move things around. That is always going to be a thing. The most traditional way of putting a camera on a tripod, I would say that people sell less tripods since jibs came to become a thing and everything else. Technology continues to march.
I got to tell you, no matter how many fancy camera support things I have, I always go for a good old tripod when I'm setting up.
You know what? I love tripods. I've been designing a little travel tripod type of thing for years. Eventually, one day it'll see the light of day. But regardless, and we're getting far afield here. My point is this: the article starts off with an interview with Elliot Mack, and Elliot Mack is a friend of mine. He has this really incredible company called Lightcraft. He, it tells his like a very contained story, a version of his story. We'll put a link in the show notes over at camnoir.com so people can go read this. But Elliot is brilliant, and he is working on some of these new tools, some of them which incorporate AI, but really ultimately at the end of the day, the more stuff that is produced, the more people get to level up, eventually the more production there will be. And I think it's really interesting right now, too, because Cinelease was also sold this week. Herc, the publicly traded rental company, which usually rents like heavy equipment, like, scissor lifts and, condor cranes and things like that. The company got sold for $100 million, and the new owners of it have, it's a group called Zello, and they've been saying that they think that we reached the bottom of the industry, and they think they are buying at exactly the perfect time, and that it is blue skies moving forward. And like, I have to say, if Cinelease, probably the leader in that sort of like G&E equipment and stages across the country, and certainly getting into other countries as well, if there are people snapping them up, I think that this article is really interesting because it further sort of underlines that there's a time of change, but at least there's some bets being made right now, which sound like the things are going to shift in a different direction. A lot of places have been disrupted, and a lot of people have been disrupted, but I'm cautiously optimistic that the discussion now is not doom and gloom AI, oh my God, because I think there was a lot of fear, especially on the part of the studios at first, where it was like, oh my God, we shouldn't invest in this because we're all going to be out of business, because why would we spend $100 million on this movie when some kid with a laptop is going to replace us? Clearly that didn't happen, and now I think people get down to work.
Not yet. Here's the thing.
Not yet, not ever. It's like you're talking about 5 decades into the future, maybe.
No, I agree. I guess I'm saying that just because AI hasn't done, what the doom/utopian people were saying 2 years ago, that it hasn't done that yet, doesn't mean that those people aren't going to stop believing in this, moving in force. And I kind of stand by what I've been saying about AI since I was goofing around with Midjourney a couple of years ago. It's going to revolutionize visual effects, but and lazy people are going to use it to write. And no one wants to watch a movie that's generated by AI, but you can, if you can get the most photoreal water ripple reflections from Midjourney or Runway or whatever you're using, if you can get that better than you can by personally manipulating it, sculpting it in Maya or Cinema 4D or Blender or whatever, then, people are going to go for the fastest result. And I do think, like in this article, like that editor who's kind of talking about, no one was going to let me make a movie, so I made my own in AI, and then he like won an award. I do believe that he's got storycraft down as an editor. He knows what he wants to use, and he's using a tool to do it. There in the article it kind of throws away that you can put in script pages and it'll give you storyboards. To which I say bullshit. There are storyboarding AIs. Yes. They're not going to give you the control or the quality that you'll get with a real storyboard artist. Will they someday? Maybe. I don't know, but the people who do that, I think that it's a grotesque misunderstanding of what storyboard artists do to think that AI can look at your script and I believe that it could probably spit out a completely cromulent shooting plan for you, but is it your shooting plan? Is it the thing that went through your hands, came out of your mind? No, it's just kind of the average of all storyboards that ever were made in the history of storyboards. And, I call bullshit about that kind of thing. I even things like it says, like it glibly says it can do color grading. I'm like, Can it? Like color grading is as much of an art, in my opinion, as cinematography, and it's practiced in the comfort of a controlled studio in air conditioning, and you're not setting up all the lights. But color grading isn't something that you just go, hey, runway, make this look prettier. You would have to tell it what you wanted, and it would be better to use a colorist who knows how to get that.
You're 100% right. But I want to take a half step back. When you were talking about all of the prophecies that are being laid out there for AI, either doom and gloom or utopia, I kind of want to just remind everybody about the people who were saying the same thing about 3D, how 3D was going to completely change the way
all fads. Yeah.
3D was up until the very end. There were people swearing that this is going to be the thing. And then 3D companies started going out of business. And then 3D companies started having other problems as well because, it seems like someone's finally started asking theater goers if they liked 3D. And most people said no. And they weren't paying extra money to see 3D.
They like it once in a while. It's weird that what they really liked was IMAX. Like they were willing to pay a premium for IMAX in 2 dimensions, just a much bigger screen with a higher fidelity image. And better controlled sound. And like that was more of a profit driver and continues to be a consistent profit driver as opposed to, like, I think if somebody said, would you rather watch Avatar in 3D or 2D? Most people would say 3D. But James Cameron is like that 1 in a million filmmaker who makes 3D so amazing.
Yeah, I think that there's quite a few people who would like to have the once in a while sort of like epic experience of 3D. And I remember that I think it was Spider-Verse 2 was also like a very successful 3D release, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I know it was an IMAX
they
release
still
too.
released like, the new Superman movie was released in 3D. I'm sure, I mean, like what ended up happening was they realized that you could make a 2D movie into a 3D movie in post for, I don't know what the investment is, but less than shooting it in 3D for sure. And
well, guess what? All the AI people out there and the 3D people will be pleased to know that before you know it, there'll be an auto convert to 3D. So
oh yeah, it's coming for us all. But
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, like, I guess the thing is that AI is here for good in terms of it's going to be part of our computing landscape for so many things we do, and it's going to increase every day. But I also do see that there's like a bubble. When you're as old as you and me, and we remember the .com bubble. We remember that there have been a bunch of bubbles over the last several years, and I feel like in our industry that often happens is people gravitate to a new shiny object. And I guess I can't speak for all people, but it's like, what do we go to movies for? Do we go to movies just to be told a story, any story, or do we go there to be told a story by human beings about human beings in some way, even if they're, aliens or, whatever? It's like, it's all a commentary on the world. And I don't give a flying fuck what a computer thinks about any of that. Like, that's not whatever would make me want to watch a TV show or go to movies. So it's like, and I think most people wouldn't know. Maybe they don't care where it comes from, whatever, but I just don't see the bubble of it. I think that these tools are going to get better and they're going to be fun for pre-visualizing ideas, yada yada. But I don't know. This article, I think, hits so many of the different sides. I don't think AI is a negative. I don't think it's positive in the same way that a screwdriver isn't a negative or a positive. It's a thing you use.
Yes, you can sharpen a screwdriver and mug someone with it. You can also fix your bicycle. And I think that there are people who are coming down on either side of the AI argument now, making the claims of both such things, that one thing is going to be horribly destructive and ruin everything, and the other one is it's a very productive tool. It will remain to be seen if people sharpen these screwdrivers or if they build things with them. But I fully believe that the doom and gloom crowd of people who were thinking that overnight everyone was going to be out of business and that it's all going away, I think clearly we can say now that did not happen. I mean, really, AI has been around for a long time. Silicon Valley came and said, boys, studios, booga, 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 you're all in trouble. That didn't happen. I happen to know, and I can't say how I know, but one of the very large tech companies is spending huge amounts of money trying to generate and do this in-house, and they've poached people from various different companies out there to try to turn this into a thing. They're going to discover, as we all will here really quickly, how really expensive that is and how the results do not create empathy and do not do all the stuff that human beings do. So, and which is what you need for a movie. You need a movie to connect with an audience. You have to have some empathy. You have to care what's going on the screen. I fully believe that this is still the early days, but everyone's going to come around to this way of thinking that is maybe more even keeled here in a relatively short period of time.
What I think it's going to take is there's going to be a fully AI movie or TV show or something that's going to come out. They're going to do a big marketing push for it, and people are going to hate it. You know, if you really love video game cutscenes, you'll go crazy for some of the AI films I've seen. That being said, if you're using it to pre-visualize your idea or help sell your idea, go for it. I don't care. You know, you're not hopefully hurting anyone. Although I think there are a lot of people who would argue that you are stealing from the collective works of every person who's ever done anything that's been digitized.
Well, we're going to talk to some more people in this space in the coming weeks and months here, and so clearly there'll be more takes on this whole thing. Ben,
Absolutely.
I think we should
AI should talk to them. Maybe we can have our AI generated people. We can bring Charles Pappert's AI back on and talk about the brown camera again.
That would be fun. All right, Ben, we should get to the interview with Christopher Ross.
The Cinematography Podcast interview.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. The Day of the Jackal is freaking awesome. I loved it, and it's really stylish and interesting. And I kind of wanted to know, I have my theories, but I wanted to know what was the jumping off point for the visual look on the show when you were brought on.
Yeah. Well, I think one, we were really, really lucky. You know, Brian Kirk, the director, he and I have worked together a couple of times before. We've known each other for longer than we've been working together. So that's a great shorthand. But in the world of television, we were lucky because our 3 episodes were pretty much when I joined the project in sort of November 2022. We shot in April, May 2023 through to October 2023. We already had the 3 episodes. Brian had already done a lot of great work with Ronan Bennett, the scriptwriter, and had made some smart changes, had consolidated some storylines. And so that knowledge that Brian had going into great detail with Ronan was almost instantly transferable to, creating the world. We already knew what 70% of the locations were going to look like. And also we have pretty phenomenal source material. The original novel, although modernized and modified enormously by Ronan to make a contemporary story and to bring it, bang up to date, the core character of the Jackal remains the same. So we have this great novel that acts as source material. I think, those first conversations, Brian wanted, a modern, slick thriller. And his main catchphrase that came from Ronan was that the show is about liars that lie all the time. Yeah. And that there's a lie on a lie on a lie. And so we wanted the imagery to also be playful and light-footed, and to not necessarily be instantly decipherable. And so that was sort of the genesis of things from a script perspective. And then the idea was that we were to, looking at lots of references like, the work of Alan J. Pakula and the paranoid thrillers of the 70s, like Clute and The Parallax View and The 3 Days of the Condor, etc.
Love them.
Yeah, and so it was like, okay, how do we make a dual protagonist, a modern, slick thriller with a dual protagonist, cat and mouse drama where the cat and the mouse change places, and to have the playfulness of a magic trick. And so it was sort of, how do we tie all of those things together, basically, as well as it being, a kind of international espionage thriller. The Jackal is sort of an international man of mystery, and so the idea is like we've got to ground ourselves in London with Bianca. We've got to ground ourselves in Spain, in Cadiz in Spain with Nuria. We've got to ground ourselves with the Jackal in Munich. So there were lots of little jumping off points, and I think that was the beauty of the kind of the collage of the script. And then the idea was that we should pull all of those elements together so that the storyline was, the visual storyline was just as captivating as the words.
But I noticed kind of a repetition of rectangular images, rectangular shapes in the frame, and even in the title credits. And it felt a little like old Saul Bass kind of opening title, kind of inspired, or even like the original Thomas Crown Affair, kind of that kind of a vibe. And I was wondering how conscious you were, if that was like one of the driving motifs. If so, like what did that mean? I mean, at a certain point, I was wondering even like what lenses you were using to get, kind of like I obviously it's anamorphic, but you're getting some kind of a bokeh that looked more squared off than elliptical. So I was curious, like what was the driving force behind that, if there was one, or it might have just been, hey, it looks cool.
No, it's very, very much a deliberate choice. Brian, what Brian wanted was to convey a sense of sort of compartmentalization, and the fact that our two characters, Bianca and the Jackal, they're both victims of their compartmentalization. So, in order to function as a person, the Jackal has created 100 different pseudonyms, which he's dipping into, job to job to job. And truthfully, who is, at the end of episode 10, could you define which one of all of those characters is the real Charles? Is the real Charles the one that we've seen with Nuria, or is the Jackal, is the real Jackal the person that's pulling the trigger at the end of a sniper sight? So I guess that was the idea, and the idea being that as well as having them compartmentalized within the frame, is to have as many reflection opportunities as possible, so that we're able to, I guess, analyze the kind of obscure duality of their lives. The fact that one is a literal spy who is trying to catch the Jackal, and the Jackal effectively is just a highly trained, espionage practitioner. And so the idea being is that these lies on lies and the subterfuge come back to haunt them in echoes of their past, and force them to make decisions about their future that are, uncomfortable. But Bianca effectively chooses work over family, and as does the Jackal. So they're, kind of two sides of the same coin. So that was one of the techniques. And then lens-wise, Brian really wanted us to go for a widescreen 2:3:9:1, cinematic frame concept with a strong sense of connection to our protagonists. So, the idea is that when we're switching allegiance from protagonist to protagonist, at times we're siding with Bianca, or want the audience to side with Bianca. At times we're relishing in the Jackal. And so there's a sort of a center punch and a decaying bokeh fall off. But he didn't want that to be the only visual motif. So we ended up working with the alpha lenses from Arri Rental, which cover the large format of the Venice sensor. And by shooting at 2.4 or 2.6 wide open, essentially, you can have quite an exaggerated square bokeh around the frame, but by stopping down to a 2.8.5, 4, that bokeh is cleaned up and they perform almost like a spherical lens. So you're able to choose between the two techniques basically.
So did you tend to go wide open with the more square bokeh? And again, like I just kept noting. At first, I was like, oh yeah, that's a cool looking set, and then I'm like, oh, there seems to be a preponderance of rectangles here, and then I was like, they're even in the bokeh. Like this, it feels very deliberate.
Yeah. So generally pushing the because I guess a lot of the imagery is in that kind of first person field of view perspective. So we're maybe 4 feet from Eddie and Lashana and being driven. I really admire the camera operating style of a film like The Game. David Fincher's work tends to have camera operating that is so, I think it's one of the reasons why he goes for so many takes, is that the camera has to move literally in sync with the performance. So if somebody raises their eyes, the frame line has to adjust with their sight line. And so we did a lot of this sort of fairly, very, very precise camera movement with our characters, so that it almost felt, you don't want the kind of freneticism of a body rig, but it's great when the Steadicam pulls back at exactly the same rate as the artist, and so that you feel like you're driven by the character. So there was a lot of that work, and that was generally in the 2.4 to 2.8 zone, to push the softness as much as possible. I used a lot of the smoke filters, a lot of the 1/8 and quarter smoke to mess around with the various. A lot of the sets have linear fluorescent tubes, or they have the square office style fluorescent tubes in ceilings. So we were going for a way of, I guess sort of amplifying the geometry with the lens choice, and then messing with the precision with the filter choice, if that makes sense. So it's sort of, here is an elegant frame with leading lines projecting through the image, but instead of being ultra precise and very, very clean, that precision is messed up a little bit by forcing the practicals to bloom and halate and eat into people's hairlines, etc. Just to add some chaos. I feel it's nice to add some unpredictability.
Let me ask you, because I was literally yesterday debating this with a friend of mine who's a cinematographer, about filtration on camera on set versus adding it in the color grade. What makes you want to do it on, like, how much of the look are you baking into the image on set versus adding in the grade?
Well, I guess I tend to use contrast filters, generally low con or smokes or classic softs, that kind of thing, to add a level of image diffusion. And I do that mostly because generally the filter application in post tends to be a little blanket, whereas when you add a diffusion filter on camera, for instance, this practical that's above my head, if we had a smoke filter here, when my hairline crosses to about here, you'd get a kind of blooming and an interaction between the subject and the background that blends in a way you don't really achieve when you do the post-production. So I would tend to use filters in camera for that side of things, and then if I wanted a kind of cosmetic filtration pass, then that's what I would do in post, basically, because you get a much more improved softness to characters' faces if you are if you are able to isolate a character's face in the mix of things. Whereas the soft filter affects almost every part of the frame equally. So yeah, I like to use the glass for chaos and the post for cosmetic.
Wow, that's a great way to think about it. And yeah, actually, I never thought about it that way. But yeah, the filter is existing in 3-dimensional space and taking light and geometry and optics and stuff. And a filter in your computer is just like looking at a 2-dimensional image and being like putting on, I mean, like you can definitely do some amazing work that way. But I've often wondered why, and I've never. I get it. I love the look of the filter on set, but I've never had like the good argument of like, why would you do it on? Why would you do something on set that was then like cooked into the image and you couldn't back it off at all?
Yeah. So I tend to, just a little. For me, an 1/8 or a 1/4 smoke is just helps to blend. I use Atmos a fair bit in terms of lighting technology, and a smoke filter helps to smooth out small differences in the Atmos level, and also to add this interactive chaos. So yeah, I like it as a bit of a finishing touch to the image.
Now, when you say interactive chaos, is that sort of like I've obviously we've all heard people describe the digital image as being a little sterile. Is that a way to kind of walk that back, make it feel a little bit more, I don't want to say film-like, but more organic?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my feeling is that I guess it's also one of the reasons why I love using anamorphic lenses as a tool. Is I like imagery that is an interpretation of reality rather than a direct representation. So, one of the challenges that you have when you have a sensor with a huge amount of dynamic range and an incredible amount of resolution, because it's an 8K sensor or a 14K sensor or whatever scale of resolution, there's almost no limit to the detail that can be rendered from the image. And I just don't think that contains a level of subjectivity that an audience needs to fall in love or admire or be charmed, won over by a character. And so I feel that the lens aberrations and smoke and grain and a sort of slightly unpredictable camera movement, all of those things just help to bed into a reality that your audience buys into, a subjective reality of the show. And I feel like the look of a show, the character of the imagery is defined by that sort of a mix. So it's like, if you can define how an audience should be feeling, then you can then create that imagery to force the audience into feeling that way. So it's like a chicken and egg scenario. If you know how you want your audience to feel, then you can sort of reverse engineer the imagery. And I tend towards the slightly more chaotic, the slightly more natural than the elevated.
So when you're breaking down a script, are you breaking it down thinking about how you want the audience to feel, or is that more of just an intuitive thing that you're working through on the day? How because I feel like that those are the ingredients that you're putting into the soup here to make this look the way that it looks. I guess I'm asking, like, how premeditated is that, or is that something that you kind of develop over talking to the director and kind of strategizing over time?
Yeah, I think it's very much as strategizing over time. I think every scene needs to do 3 things. So it needs to introduce a new character. It needs to establish time and place, and it needs to achieve something for one of the other characters, something like that. And so if the scene just achieves one of those things, then it probably doesn't deserve to be a scene in and of itself. It should be collapsed into, so it's a sort of a screenwriting note. But I sort of expand that from a cinematography perspective, and I go, right, in this, as I'm breaking the script down with the director, I'm writing little notes as to what does this, what three things does this scene achieve, basically. And so when you have those three things, it's a question of what is the visual style or the visual tricks that we can play in this scene breakdown to best deliver those three items. So for instance, is like in the scene where Eddie removes his prosthetic for the first time in the a third of the way into episode 1. You're discovering who the real Eddie Redmayne is. At the time, you're discovering that that he has got another job that he's about to do, and you're discovering that it was all a disguise in the first place, and that it was one big sort of magic trick. And so one of the reason why we did the shot that passes through the mirror and out into the open plan kitchen area was to convey the sense of this character has just performed a magic trick in front of your eyes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
and done this, this maneuver, and in a way, it's a curious bit of subterfuge, because we don't know that it was successful. As far as the audience is aware, it was a failure because he didn't kill the guy. Yeah. So the idea is that it's like, he's pulling off his makeup because this is a fail. What a shame. But we know as filmmakers, we know different, and so we're pulling off this elaborate magic trick. But yeah, that was the idea, is that we want to be mysterious and playful at the same time as delivering on the regular bit of story that is, this character that you've seen for the first 20 minutes is a disguise, and it's an elaborate one, right down to the contact lenses and the bald cap all the
teeth,
way back.
Everything, yeah.
Teeth, the whole thing, yeah. And and also, I mean, you don't see him doing it, but it's a full body body transformation suit that gives the character a paunch and pushes out his hips, and basically ages him by 25 years. So I guess it's that kind of idea. You get the script, and through the conversations with Brian, it's like, where do we want to be playful? Where do we want to be exciting? When do we want to feel in love? When do we want to, at what point, I guess the hardest thing about a script like The Jackal is our lead character is a cold-blooded killer and executes people that we don't know whether they are guilty of some crime or what the reason for the execution is. But we as an audience need to be sort of, not quite cheering and high-fiving each other that the kill went off. But we definitely want to be on Eddie's side. We definitely need to be on the side of the Jackal. And so that's the complex sort of visual conundrum is, can Brian and Luke, the editor, between the combination of all of the creatives, come up with this idea of the charismatic kill that is so charming and so such a prestige to the magic trick that you're on the killer's side. It's almost the study of a serial killer in a way.
Yeah, and even also reminded me, unsurprisingly, a little bit of David Fincher's The Killer, which Eric Messerschmidt shot. It was interesting to hear you bring up Fincher, because I really do feel like there was like a crazy precision to all of it. What went into all the inserts? How much planning did you guys put into it, and sort of what drove that aesthetic for you?
Yeah, well, so Eddie went to sniper school So there we have an incredible military advisor called Paul Biddis, and Paul sent Eddie away for a couple of days to learn to a shooting range to learn the sort of techniques that are required to shoot even over. I think it was 500 meters was Eddie's range, and obviously in the storyline we're shooting over 3.5 kilometers, because that's sort of a meticulous planning process for the sniper. The other meticulous planning process is also the getaway. So the setup though, the Jackal must arrive in a timely fashion, must build the gun in an efficient, methodical way, must leave no trace of their person behind, and must, evacuate as fast as possible. And so the meticulous nature of pulling the trigger is amplified into a meticulous prep and a meticulous escape. And that must breed a sort of meticulous, neurotic, personality with an extreme level of OCD and attention to detail. And so in a way, that series of rationalizations pushes you into, image creation model where you're very precisely arriving on the bullets coming out of one bit of the suitcase, on the barrel being removed. So we had the suitcase. The suitcase was an incredible prop built by the art department. And I think we were talking about that suitcase for about 12 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And then it was built about 3 weeks before the shoot. And Eddie had there were two versions of the suitcase, one that was on camera and one that was sort of practice and stunt orientated. So Eddie had the practice case with him, and at home would be, how quickly can I meticulously disassemble the suitcase and assemble the gun in order to achieve the goal. And Brian and I watched Eddie doing this, over and over and over and over again, and we're like, right, that's the little moment here that says a lot about character. There's another little moment here, a little moment here. So in a way, building the gun, I think, took about 15 minutes from start to finish. And so the idea was that we would have these tiny little, character-based, and the storyboard artist is quite correct. These character-based detail shots say almost more, the shot of the bullets being stood on end, say more about the character than a shot of Eddie's face in this particular scene. And so it was super important for Brian that all of the inserts in that sequence, everything, all of the detail shots, that was all shot by the main unit, basically, with Eddie. They're all Eddie's hands. I think there's only one shot in the whole sequence that isn't Eddie's hands and wasn't shot by the main unit at the time of photography, of main unit photography, was the dial on the side of the gun that he clicks 3 clicks round for the wind position, because at the time that function didn't function properly on the gun, and we shot it 2 months later once the gun was reconfigured. So yeah, meticulous. You have to, as filmmakers, you turn yourself into the same sort of meticulous sociopath as your lead character. You go down the same rabbit hole.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Were there any other, I was going to ask you about that mirror shot at the beginning, but are there any other shots like that you can go into any detail about the kind of planning or execution or something special you had to do to kind of pull them off?
Yeah, well, I guess, there's really only two primary long single shotters in the first couple of episodes, really. Both of them in episode 1. The first is the opening shot of the show, which again starts on Brian wanted it to be kind of anachronistic. He wanted it to feel like we could have arrived in a period version of the Day of the Jackal. It could be the 1970s. So he wanted a kind of a sort of a down at heel apartment in Munich that was owned by a fairly hermit-like older man that could kind of sit in the 21st century or the 20th century, either way. And we were talking about the sequence in terms of the information that is required. And so the first bit of information that's required is that you need to understand that there's a dictaphone that's playing, and that the dictaphone is saying a line of dialogue, and then a voice off screen is saying repeating the line of dialogue. And then the idea is that we travel up and we see the voice, we see the face associated with the voice, and then we leave that room having picked up a lanyard that will become an important prop later on in the story. And as we leave the bathroom, at least at some point in the sequence, we need to see that this character has a gun. And then you're questioning why the character has a gun. And then you see a dead body. And anyway, we were talking about the sequence as was written, and it began to shape itself as a potential single shot, so that you could be playfully delivering these bits of information, but rather than delivering the information in a series of, cuts from Eddie to a cut of the dead body, or a shot of Eddie and a cut of a detail of the gun, it's like, wouldn't it be fun if we could blend all of the character shots and all of the detail shots one after the other in a linear timeline, and string it all together. So that was the idea. So we had that idea of the dictaphone to the mirror to the lanyard to the face to the gun to the dead body to the struggle to the cigarettes to the murderer, and then out into the wider world. And then we in meetings with the production designer, the brilliant Richard Bullock, we try to work out how Eddie could lead the camera on this journey. So Richard had already had a rough idea of the layout of the apartment, having recce'd a couple of apartments in Munich. And we were able to just modify a little bit of the interior, push the bathroom further away from the living room to increase the journey space. And then, because the camera needed to start sort of outside the bathroom, we had a series of floating walls that could be puppeteered into position so that we could, maneuver the camera where we needed to maneuver it while we were in the bathroom. But then when we were down in the living room, the puppeteered door and wall of the bathroom could be replaced, and the apartment looked like we hadn't touched it. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was a playful little one. I think it lasts for 2 minutes and 2 minutes 15 seconds, something like that. And and it's one of the best, most interesting one-ers that I've ever been fortunate enough to construct with a director, because it is kind of, it's a never-ending, because the frame changes so often, the storytelling is as frequent as if you were editing. So, and that's a rarity. Normally with a one-er, there's dead moments when the camera and the characters aren't really telling a story. Whereas in this case, we were able to collapse all of the stories into this one little journey. So that was fun. And then the second was the bathroom shot. And again, that was to be playful, and hopefully you don't even, and from my perspective, I hope you don't even notice that we've passed through the mirror. I hope you don't I hope you're not aware of the trick. You're just like, it's sort of uncanny valley filmmaking, that instead of showing off that we've passed through the mirror, you just feel unsettled by the image in some way, and that it just has like a little hum of, unfamiliarity.
Well, there's like a wait a minute vibe to it. I mean, I think it, like when I watched it, it was like, it's sort of like in the Zemeckis movie Contact, when I almost said Clarice, sorry, when young Jodie Foster, played by I think Jenna Malone, runs up to the mirror, and you realize you've been seeing this shot. It's an impossible shot. The shot was always the reflection of the mirror. Just a very clever use of that. That, like you said, like I love the idea of it being playful. Because and I think that that's a great way to approach this kind of material too, because it is such a cat and mouse thing, and a cat is playing with a mouse, but is also going to kill the mouse. But I want to ask you about being president of the BSC. To me, that's kind of a big deal. I don't think we've ever had a BSC president on the podcast. Hopefully, I'm right about that. Well, I'm not being horribly offensive to somebody, but. But when I saw that, I was like, whoa, the two biggest questions I had with you outside of Day of the Jackal were that and a TV show that you had worked on that just happens to be one of my favorites. But first, let's talk about the BSC situation. How did that come about? What do you do as president of the BSC, and how are you making cinematography? How are you changing the lives of cinematographers in the UK by running that organization? Yeah,
well, hopefully for the better. Is the hope, but I guess I'm a very, very privileged to have been the sort of the custodian of the BSE for the last 3.5 years. I guess the idea is that we're a representative of the community. So much like in my presidency. I've gotten to know Shelley Johnson, the former president of the ASC, and now Mandy Walker, who's taken over, and Stephen Lighthill, who came before Shelley. The idea is, I think that the organisation, the ASC, the BSC, very, very similar, is really a focal point for the interconnection of the similar lives of cinematographers. And we have a responsibility to be in the leadership role in sort of technical innovation, and to be as helpful as we can with our manufacturers and our designers. We at the BSE host an expo once a year, a little bit like Cine Year, but a much smaller UK-based, idea that promotes the innovation of our patrons and the filmmaking community as a wider thing. And also we act to hopefully, represent the community in terms of shining a light on younger members of the filmmaking community who have perhaps not quite made it to BSC membership as of yet, and to increase educational opportunities, to increase, work opportunities and knowledge base. So it's about channeling our 150 full members who are cinematographers and our 60 associate members who are camera operators to look nostalgically to the past in celebration of great filmmakers that came before us, and to lead in the knowledge that we must enable and give opportunity to younger filmmakers, knowing that they will replace us as our time moves forwards, basically. It's sitting in that zone.
And you've been doing it for what, 2 years now?
So 3.5 years. Oh, wow. And my time comes to a close in at the end of the year, January 2026.
So the TV series I wanted to ask you about, and you only shot one episode to my knowledge, but it's one of my favorites. It's called Fortitude. And
yeah, 2 episodes.
You did 2. IMDb only had you down as 1, but I was curious about that show because last year when the new True Detective season came out with Jodie Foster, it's by no means derivative of Fortitude, but it felt the same because they're both like crime thrillers with kind of horror overtones that happen at the North Pole, and it really was one of those shows. I know they did like 2.5 seasons or something, but the third half season has never, to my knowledge, been released in America. I've never been able to see it.
Okay.
But if you could just talk to me about your experience there, because I think they shot it in Norway, but it's set basically at the North Pole. But what was the experience of working on that like, and what brought you to that?
Yeah, I was incredibly lucky. So the amazing John Conroy, ASC, ISC.
We are in the process of trying to get John on the show, by the way. He's really
okay.
He's really good friends with a friend of mine.
Yeah,
Zero Hour.
Hero Hour. So,
Zero Hour.
0 Hour. So so John had photographed previous production, I think, with Sam, the director. And so, that coupling, they shot the first 3 episodes of the season. I think it was a 12-episode season 1. Mm-hmm. I think I was in for episodes 11 and 12. Anyway,
so you shot the climax. You shot like the
climax.
Big because I always tell people about the show. It starts feeling a lot like a police procedural and ends like a horror movie.
Yeah, exactly. So Sam Sam directed the first 3 episodes and then decided to come back for the final 2 of the season. And John, unfortunately, was unavailable, so reached out and asked if I would shoot these last 2 episodes. And fortunately for me, the film, the world of film scheduling and television scheduling are 2 very separate items. And so a film that I was supposed to be doing had just been punted, 3 months down the line. So I had a little available window. And it was amazing. My first day's filming was in a little village called Eskifjord in the on the east coast of Iceland, a little coastal village. And then later that day, jumped in a helicopter and shot some aerial work for the same episode. It was great. I guess it was sort of the first, because it was in the UK, it was a show for Sky Television. Yeah. It was just before the sort of streaming revolution. So it was pretty much as from a production budget below the line scenario, it was just about as big a show as you would get at that time, I would say. And we had some fun. When John had originally photographed Iceland, it was December. I think they recce'd in December and they shot in January, February. There was basically like 1 hour of daylight a day. It was a nightmare. It was, sub-zero. And when I was there, it was the exact opposite. There was 1 hour of nighttime a day. And in fact, it never got fully night. You were fully energized. You never wanted to sleep because it was, it felt like 3:00 in the afternoon at midnight. Wow. It was a really fun experience. And the stages back in London had been set up for the show. So it was great to sort of step in and follow in the footsteps.
No, that's great to hear. And I love that series. I always recommend it to people, and I thought it looked amazing. And you're doing those last 2 episodes of season 1. To me, like I was edge of my seat. I was devouring those. They were streaming, I think, on Amazon Prime here in the States at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much fun. The hardest thing was we wanted the glacier slopes of the finale to be grayer and moodier, and it was just blue sky and like alpine vistas all around. So that was, and it's quite hard to drive a Manitou on a glacier for various reasons. So it was there were a lot of fun and games involved in bringing that to life.
Amazing, amazing. So I think that wraps it up. But congratulations again on Day of the Jackal, which is streaming in America on Peacock. I don't know where it's streaming elsewhere. I saw it on Peacock. Looks amazing. Eddie Redmayne is great. The whole cast is great. Just wonderful spy thriller action. We don't have enough of that right now. So I congratulate you on that, and congratulations on your nomination for it, because it's highly deserved.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks very much for the invitation for a chat.
Where can people find you online if they want to see more of your work, if they want to interact with you? Are you on Instagram or whatever? Do you have your own website? I know you have your own website because I went through it, but.
Yeah. So yeah, there's if anyone wants to check it out, there's a website with some mood films that I've created for Day of the Jackal and Shogun, among others. And that's just very simply www.christopherrossbsc.com. And you can check me out on Instagram. My tag is Edgy Bevel, EDJIBEVEL.
Hey everybody, so that was Christopher Ross. Christopher, thank you so much for coming on the show. What a great chat. I got off the call and I feel like I always say this. My wife was here and I was like, what a nice guy. Like just a really cool guy. Definitely check out Day of the Jackal if you have Peacock. It's streaming. I think it's a really taut, cool spy story, the kind of thing you don't get all the time. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So Ben,
or I should say espionage. I don't know. It's technically spies, but anyway, go on.
Espionage, spy,
assassins.
It's all in the same. It's all in the same wheelhouse, I'd say. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So Ben, you know the answer to this question. What time is it?
It is time to pay the bills, I believe.
That's right. It's time to pay the bills. We have to thank our fine friends over at Laowa, makers of all kinds of incredible lenses. If you go to lawacine.com, you will see the latest from their, very, very wide breadth of offerings. I want to draw some particular attention to what I personally believe are probably the highest performing 2 times anamorphic lenses under $5,000 in the world. The Laowa Proteus 2X lenses, they cost $49.99 each, which, for some people out there, they're going to go immediately, holy crap, that's really expensive. And it is. If you're in the mindset of the, still camera sort of stuff that slaps onto your DSLR, yes, it's a pricey lens. In the world of cinema lenses, it is an incredible bargain. I saw some stuff shot recently on the Laowa 2X Proteus lenses, and it is so beautiful. It's really incredible value. You definitely want to take a look at the Laowa 2 times Proteus lenses. They cover Super 35. They're incredible build quality. They're relatively fast. And of course, you can get them at Hot Rod Cameras. They're on demo over there. They're available in different flare colors. The blue is very sort of traditional. The silver will take on the color of whatever light. And then the amber is a very sort of like intense, amber flare effect. They're really, really cool. Definitely check them out. We'll put a link over in the show notes at camnoir.com and check out lawacine.com as well.
And now, short ends.
All right, Ben, it is our short end time of the show. It's the time we talk about our pet obsessions. What's your pet obsession this week?
Well, the reason I actually wasn't able to do the show last week, I had to go out of town to do projection design on a play up in Big Bear. And if you are in LA or I don't know, Palmdale, Lancaster, any of the places that feed Big Bear easily. Big Bear is about a 2.5 hour drive from LA. It's an amazing play, and we've done it twice before. It's directed by Jamie Robledo, written by Vanessa Stewart, and it stars French Stewart. It's called Stoneface, and it's about Buster Keaton. And
I'm a huge fan of Buster Keaton. That's so cool.
You would love this play. I mean, if you find yourself in LA and you wanted to go up there, I can definitely get us a comp. I would go see it and come back.
I'm in town next week.
Let's do it. Seriously.
Okay.
So what Vanessa wrote and what Jamie Robledo has brilliantly staged is basically it's a biopic of Buster Keaton, the silent film star, one of the early silent film stars, and into his real biography, which involves, like marital problems and excessive drinking and his friends dying, Fatty Arbuckle and stuff like that. Vanessa has brilliantly woven in classic Buster Keaton bits that they stage live, that we do live on stage.
Oh, that's great.
And it is an everything burrito of a play. And, for projection design, I've done projection design on a lot of plays, and people often ask me what it is. And it's like, if you go to the theater, you'll sometimes see interactive video or video being used for any number of things. And it's a really cool tool. And sometimes it's used right, sometimes it's used wrong. And in this play, it's just freaking essential. It's one of the most essential pieces of the show because it's about silent films. And so there's a lot of projected film stuff in it. There are captions like in silent films, and even sometimes dialogue done as a caption. And that was the thing actually that we shot on that not entirely complete green screen a couple weeks ago with the very camera that I'm using. And I actually have to give you a shout out because I needed to get a new monitor anyway. And you recommended a Portkeys monitor that you guys sold me. And it was great. I mean, it was really great. We had to do a lot of different shooting. We're using a Sony camera. It connects to the Sony, and you're able to control all of the Sony on-screen commands using the touchscreen monitor. Super bright. We had to do some pickups outside during the day. It's got false color, it's got peaking, it's got all this stuff, and it really gave me enormous confidence while shooting. And we used that for this shoot. Anyway, it's a great show. French Stewart is amazing. The whole cast is great. And it's a show that if you're into silent film and if you can get yourself to Big Bear is a wonderful place to go visit anyway. So Ilya, what is your short end this week?
It is The Rehearsal Season 2. I slept on this. I have not seen it. Have you seen The Rehearsal Season 2?
Yes. Oh my God.
Oh my God. OMG. Holy crap.
It like transcends everything that it is and becomes like a great work of surrealist art, I would say. It
is. It is self-reflexive. It is funny. It is serious. It is important. It is so many different things. HBO ought to be incredibly proud of this. This is what HBO is all about. This is like truly the idea of like premium television. This is so freaking good. If you've not seen The Rehearsal, I haven't seen The Rehearsal season 1. I started with season 2, and
season 1's pretty great, but season 2, Nathan, the host, the main guy,
Nathan Fielding, Fielder,
he becomes obsessed with airline safety. And I mean, the whole premise is that like in order to do something right, you have to rehearse it over and over again. And so he creates these bigger and bigger rehearsal type scenarios. And so with the airline safety thing, it's like he wants to go talk to Congress and he gets real people involved. And it's not a Borat kind of situation. I think everyone knows what he's doing. He's not misrepresenting himself in any way. And by the end of the season, he's literally flying airplanes for a living. He's gotten his FAA license. I don't think that's a big spoiler. It's just like when that happened, I was like, but this isn't a rehearsal, because like you see him rehearsing like on a volume stage, and it looks like he's flying a plane, and then someone steps outside of it or whatever. It's so good, and also I think it has one of the most surreal images ever when he tries to understand Sully and recreates Sully's life by being Sully as a baby in an oversized set, and these giant puppets puppeteered by people come in and parent him as Sully.
Stop talking. You do not want to give away any more of that sequence. It is for me the penultimate moment in the show. The season is so incredible, and I laughed out loud for 2 minutes straight. My cheeks hurt. That was
my jaw was just on the floor. I'm like, I can't believe grown adults did this.
Oh yes, and did it so well.
No, it's a brilliant piece of work.
Anyway, yeah, I can't give a strong enough endorsement of The Rehearsal season 2. If you don't have HBO Max, you should. It's worth getting it just to watch the 6 episodes.
Ask your friend for their login for a day.
Oh my God, this is great.
The series is so weird and subversive and brilliant and well done, like perfectly done.
I cannot tell you how many shows out there I wish were more subversive, and this one is super appropriately subversive. And I loved the fact that people will just actually be talking about, airline safety and, and pilots and everything else, because this is, this is actually something that I know a little bit from way back when. There's like some very, very famous plane crashes, including these Korean air flights in the 70s, which it turns out, of course, they discovered that there was a real problem with subordinate officers challenging the pilot to say this is an unsafe maneuver or whatnot. And they changed it, and it got better, and it really, really changed. So clearly there's a lot more work to be done, but man, anyway, it's I can't give it a strong enough recommendation. Go see the rehearsal season 2.
You and I don't agree. You and I rarely agree on stuff, and I could not get enough of that show. It was so good.
I will tell you that you and I tend to agree very much when something is freaking amazing. Yeah. And this I think qualifies. So anyway, Ben, that is just about going to do it for this episode. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
You can find me at benrock.com, and all my social media stuff and my reel and all that kind of stuff is right there. How about yourself, Ilya? Where can people find you?
You can find me at Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com. Also, for some reason this week, Instagram. So at Ilya Friedman at Instagram is where people have been reaching out to me too. So,
all right.
Ben, who made this show possible? Who do we have to thank?
I mean, always number one, Alana Cody, our producer, who
number one on the call sheet.
No, seriously, we would be nowhere without. We'd be churning out 2 episodes a year without her. If it was just you and me, holy crap, she's the best. She gets us all these great interviews. We have a couple coming up. I've got one this Friday that I am really stoked about. She was like, "Hey, have you? Can you watch blah blah blah?" And I'm like, "I have already seen that, and I cannot wait to talk to that DP." We got to thank our editor, Charlie Nix, who slices and dices, and he just had 2 weeks of not having to do this, so hopefully we aren't too rusty. But Charlie does a great job putting the show together, and he's a nice guy besides. And last but not least, we got to thank Kays Alatracci, our composer. He composed every scrap of music you hear on this podcast. Check him out at musicbykays.com, or go to his YouTube channel, which is Kays Lab. Kays Labs? Kays Lab. Kays Labs.
Yes, that's it. It's plural K's, singular lab. Yeah.
Kays Lab on YouTube, and watch him fix synthesizers if that's your kind of thing. He's very good at he's much more of a tinkerer than I am. Although I did update. I did get the 3D printer that I was talking to you about on the last episode. I got the Bamboo Labs A1, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
have you made a pen holder yet?
Here's my skull pen holder that I made with Sunlu white PLA.
Wow, look at you, all fancy. All right. Yeah. Good, well done. So Ben, you want to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.